before we get going, I want to say, even though this is an incredibly old series right now, spoiler alert before we go any further in this review. If you haven't seen it before, you need to go and see it. If you want to see the series, probably not a good idea to watch or listen to this review, because this does give away a lot of secrets as far as character development goes. So let's get into the review. Legends, welcome along to a new episode. This is TEELA'S quest in He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. As I did say before the intro, this is, there's a lot of spoilers in this episode, so if you haven't seen the series and you're interested in watching it, this gives away quite a bit. So spoiler alert before we go any further. It feels weird saying spoiler alert for a series as old as this one, but I'm enjoying the crap out of it. I've seen it before as a small child, but it's been so long. I'm kind of watching it with fresh eyes right now, and this is probably the first one so far as character development goes. Gives a lot away. So let's get into it. TEELA'S quest starts off at the beginning. We get a bit of background on He-Man's mother. I did say in an earlier episode in the series, I think it was episode 2, He-Man's mother calls herself a human and suggests that she's actually from Earth. At the beginning of this episode, we see a flashback sequence to young Marlena Glenn. We actually get her real name in this episode, and she is an astronaut from Earth, and she's caught in a cosmic storm in space. Her spaceship is going to crash. She crash lands, and you see her getting out of the ship, and we kind of pull out from that. It turns out it's like a memory projector that Man-at-Arms has created, and it's actually Queen Marlena remembering back, telling Adam about Earth, where she came from and whatnot. So it was interesting to get that bit of character development, because that was the one thing stood out for me in that earlier episode. And please excuse any noise you can hear in the background. Someone has decided to start cutting their grass whenever I started recording this. So yes, Queen Marlena and Prince Adam are chatting about Earth, and she's telling him what it was like, and he's like, do you miss it? She says, sometimes, but this is where my true family and life is now. And at this point, TEELA turns up looking for Prince Adam, because he was supposed to be meeting her for some weapons practice that morning. Didn't show his face, and he's trying to make all these excuses, and she froze the memory projector on him, and it shows what he was actually doing that morning. And him and Cringer were off fishing, and TEELA's like, you should be ashamed of yourself. And he said, I really am ashamed of myself, I didn't catch anything. This is a brilliant episode for the simple fact that Paul Dini was the writer of this episode, and he is fantastic. If you don't know who Paul Dini is, he had a lot to do, obviously, with the crafting of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, but later on in his career he would go on to be the head writer, one of the head writers. I don't want to say head writer because I'm not 100% sure in this, but I do know he had a heck of a lot to do with Batman, the animated series, and as we all know, that's one of the most famous and revered animated series in the history of cartoons. And yes, let's get back into this episode. So after TEELA busts Prince Adam's chops for being off fishing, we see Man-at-Arms and Orko, and they're having their usual relationship in this episode, where Man-at-Arms is the straight-laced person that's, he invents a lot of stuff. He's got a workshop within the palace, and Orko is always trying to make something for the king and the queen. And in this episode, he's trying to build a music box for the king and the queen, but unaware that some of the parts he has been using are actually bomb parts. And Man-at-Arms confronts him with this, and he opens up the music box, and you see the timer of a bomb counting down. The pair of them freak out, and Man-at-Arms closes the box, chucks it into like a big barrel thing of water in the middle of the workshop, and the bomb pops up to the surface, and it opens up and it starts playing music. It's like the timer was counting down to start the song, essentially. So everything's all well and fine, nothing exploded, but Argo says, I'll go back to the drawing board and try this again. He uses his magic to chuck the music box across the workshop, and you hear the explosion of whether it was the music box exploded or it was the armory that he'd accidentally thrown it into. We're also clear on that, but that's a little bit of comic relief for this episode. It's a pretty serious episode from this point on, and as Teela comes in and she's curious because of, you know, Prince Adam's relationship with Queen Marlena, and she's actually used the memory, well, not at this point actually, just after this she goes and uses the memory projector to look back on her own life. But before she does that, she asks Man-at-Arms in this scene, I'm wondering about my own parents. So we find out, we have known at this point that Man-at-Arms is Teela's father, but we find out in this episode he's actually her adopted father. And he tells her that, you know, your father was a mighty warrior that died in battle to save Eternia. He was a great man, and I'm honoured to take on the role of raising you as my own, essentially. She asks about her mother, and Man-at-Arms is like, that's a secret I've been sworn not to give away. You will find out one day, but you won't find out from me. And he goes back to his own thing. So off Teela goes, checks out the memory projector, goes back. She's got no actual memory of her mother or father, and she's kind of all devastated at this. So she decides she's going to go to see the Oracle at the Crystal Sea, and, you know, she lets Argo know where she's going, but she tells him, don't be telling anyone. So off she goes. Prince Adam and Cringer see her flying off in a real panic, and they're wondering where's she going. So Orko appears at this stage, and she's more than capable of looking after herself, but they question him, and he kind of lets it slip accidentally that she's actually going to the Crystal Sea to see the Oracle. And Prince Adam is like, that is far too dangerous, so he transforms into He-Man, goes off in search of Teela. At this point we skip over to find out what's going on with Skeletor in this episode, and him and Merman are in Snake Mountain, and Skeletor is using his magical crystal ball sort of setup. He sees that Teela's heading off towards the Crystal Sea, and, you know, for the main villain in this series, the Skeletor is only in this for this one short scene, and it's more Merman than anybody else. It's the main villain in this episode, and he's like, you know, 20 years ago I had a victim for Bukal, the sea demon, and Man-at-Arms rescued that victim. This is his daughter. I demand revenge. So Skeletor gives him his blessing, go get her, sort of thing. So off he goes. Teela has made it to the Crystal Sea and gets surrounded by shadow monsters, and, you know, we think she's going to get caught by these guys, and she has this staff that she normally uses for fighting with, and one of them breaks it in half. But she knows, she's very intelligent, she knows they're afraid of bright light, and she has these it's almost like the little pellets that you would know Batman using, like the smoke bomb pellet sort of thing, but this is like a flash bomb. So she rips one of them out, bang, flash, they all run off, and she continues on. She finds the Oracle, and the Oracle begins to share an old story of what happened to Teela as a child, and we skip back in time to a young man at arms who was called by the Falcon Zoar, who we all know is actually the sorceress's falcon form. She can transform into a falcon to travel, and she leads man at arms to like a mountain peak where there's something in the falcon's nest, and Merman and his cronies are climbing up to try and get at whatever it is, and Zoar is fighting to try and keep them away. As the Oracle says, Zoar is ready to give her life to protect what's in the nest. So man at arms is climbing up to try and save whatever it is, and manages to stop Merman, and he chucks up this dart that kind of melts the platform they're standing on. They all fall to the ground, and Merman swore revenge on man at arms for beating him that day. But before we can figure out before what we're shown is in the nest, Teela in the Oracle's cave gets caught by Merman. I've completely blanked Merman's name. Merman's cronies catch her in the cave, capture her, and Merman takes her, and he's going to use her once again for an offering towards Bukal, the sea demon. And he has her tied up, and he's got like a spear with a crimson pearl that the person that wields this can control the sea demon Bukal. So he casts the spell as He-Man turns up to call the demon. The demon arrives, and Teela's still caught at this stage. He-Man is stopped from getting into this. There's a door drops down that blocks He-Man's entrance into this area where the demon has appeared, and Teela is trapped in, and He-Man uses his strength to break through the wall, overpowers Merman's cronies, and throws the sword of power that Teela is tied up with her. I'm trying to do this without actually using too many movements visually, because this is going out as an audio podcast form as well, so I need to really describe what's going on here. She's got her hands tied above her head, and He-Man chucks the sword of power that breaks the ropes, and she gets free, and He-Man tells her to use his sword. She uses that to kind of keep the sea demon away from her, and she manages to get over towards He-Man. While all this is going on, Orko's actually gone to Castle Grayskull, and he's filled in the sorceress and what's happening. And the sorceress is, to Teela's side I go. She transforms into Zoar. Off she flies. So back at this point where Teela has gotten away from this, I was going to say she demon because that was the previous episode. The sea demon, Zoar, appears in the sky, and Merman is on top of this cliff, and he has the spear with the crimson pearl in it, and Zoar grabs it from his hand, drops it down, breaks it. That breaks a spell that Merman has over the sea demon. So then the sea demon turns on him, so he's trapped on top of this mountain peak, and the demon's trying to grab hold of him. But He-Man, being the hero that he is, believes that everyone, even an evil person, if they need rescuing, they're going to get rescued. So he climbs up the mountain, grabs hold of Merman, and he's like, I'm probably going to hit myself for this later on, and he chucks him to safety. Merman jumps up and starts laughing, and he says, thanks for the save, fool. Let's see if you can save yourself now. And he runs off, leaves him to it, and He-Man manages to actually break a chunk off the top of the mountain where the sea demon is. The sea demon gets trapped in the water again, covered by all this mountain rubble, and yes, the day is saved once again. So we go back once again to the Oracle's cave to find out what actually was in the Falcon's nest 20 years previously, and we figure out, you're going to know it if you're watching this episode. We're told, it's confirmed that Teela was the baby that was in the nest that Merman was trying to get hold of to sacrifice to Bakul 20 years ago, and that Zoar, who is the sorceress, is in fact Teela's mother. So at this point, the sorceress actually turns up and tells Teela, yes, I am your mother, and your destiny is that one day you're going to take my place as the guardian of Castle Grayskull. But until then, you can't remember this, which is a genius way to finish off this episode. I felt like, it's just the character of Teela, her relationship to Prince Adam, and everyone, if she continues on from this episode with that knowledge, it's going to really change the dynamic of everything that they're trying to set up within the series. So the sorceress uses her powers to block the memory of her being Teela's mother, and it's beautiful and heartbreaking all at the same time. But that's pretty much where the episode finishes off. Everybody returns home, and our public service announcement at the end of this episode is all parenthood related. And actually Teela breaks the fourth wall, speaks to the camera in this one, and she's like, in this story, I went looking for my mother, but what I learned was that Man-at-Arms, even though he's not my biological father, loved me like a real parent. And that's what we need to remember. It doesn't matter whether we're born into a family where we're biologically sons or daughters, or we're adopted, and the people that love us and teach us and show us the good deserve as much love in return from us as we get from them, sort of thing. That's brilliant. This is a perfect little episode. Absolutely enjoyed the crap out of this one, and yes, that's the one thing I love about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, is the depth of the storytelling and the deep morals that they try to give the viewer, and it's something that I'm sorely lacking in modern television, cartoons, even grown-up series. It's just the morality that we had back in the early 80s with shows like this, it doesn't seem to exist anymore, and I would love to see something like this coming back, and hopefully Revelation does more like this episode. And yes, just talking about Paul Dini earlier on, it would be amazing to see him coming back to maybe write a couple of episodes for Revelation. So Kevin Smith, if you happen to be either watching this video or listening to this podcast, there's an idea for you, and I know you know Paul Dini. Guys, thank you so much for checking out the video. Please hit that subscription button, and don't forget to press that bell icon to be notified of future uploads. Please get into the description box below this video and check out my social media links down there, and check out all that good stuff, and I will see you in the next video.